Here are the answers to the most common questions I get from you guys, my viewer, when it comes to luxury watches. Why do some watches sell over its MSRP? Well, the most basic answer, obviously, is supply and demand. Popularity of the brand, popularity of a particular model within the brand. How difficult is it to get a particular watch? Now, in a lot of cases, the supply and demand is very, very simple. Rolex makes 1.2 million watches in 2023 is what Rolex made. But guess what? There was demand for more than $1.2 million. In fact, much more, to the tune of $10.1 billion were the Rolex sales last year. Does that mean it was all the watches that were manufactured in 2023? No, some were probably manufactured earlier. But the demand was there to the tune where models were selling at almost 3, sometimes 4x. Of course, add in the COVID craze, the market went crazy with everything, watches, cars, purses, any type of luxury goods, and sometimes not even luxury goods. The demand was so much higher with all the money that kind of filtered into the market that prices went crazy. Now, of course, there are other situations that happen less than, let's say, that of supply and demand, and that is approval process. A lot of companies out there will approve you in order to get a certain watch, or you have to have certain purchasing history in order to get a particular watch. The best example is Patek Philippe. They do it best. They have what's called application pieces. Now, what are those? That's when the brand literally has to approve you whether or not they will allow you to buy that watch. Sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? It usually comes to their grand complication lines, things like minute repeaters, tourbillons, watches that are usually $500,000 plus. But nevertheless, now the brand has gotten themselves so good, they made such a good name for themselves that they literally pick and choose who gets to spend $500,000 plus on a watch. And some of these things are way over $1 million. Sounds pretty crazy. But the basic premises is usually supply and demand, with a few exceptions, such as the Patek Philippe application process. Now you've bought your watch. Let's say you're one of the guys that got approved by Patek Philippe, or one of the lucky guys that got to pick up a Rolex at list, whether you waited in line or not. The next question you guys always ask me is, how often should a luxury watch be serviced? I'm going to tell you how it is, because that's what I always do. My personal watches, the watches that I have worn, I service them when they need the service, meaning when they stop working. Of course, if you look at the manufacturer's recommendation, they'll tell you anywhere from 3 to 7 years. Some brands out there like Omega will ask you to do a mini service, a regular service, another mini service. And by the time you do all those services in the 7-year span, your $7,000 watch becomes a $12,000 watch in service costs. You have to understand something. There's no life or death situation when it comes to servicing a particular watch. It's not a car. If you don't change the brakes on your car, eventually you'll hit a wall. If you don't service an airplane, eventually the airplane will crash. If you don't service your watch, it'll stop ticking. Is it going to hurt the watch? No, because it can be fixed. If you think of a car, once you've bought that car, BMW has already made its money. How can BMW continue making money off of the consumer? The way a company can continue making money is with what we like to call service. Even a better example, I own a 1975 Rolex Submariner single red. The single red referring to the red writing on a dial. It's as old as me. I'm 48 years old, and so is that watch. I've yet to service it. It still keeps decent time, within 2 to 5 seconds a day. I go swimming with it. I've dropped it numerous times, and it keeps on ticking. Can you do the same with a car? These mechanical things are fairly consistent when it comes to watches, when it comes to cars, and other things that move. This is what I personally do. What you do is your prerogative, because there's other people out there, they want that piece of paper, they want that service history, they want all that stuff if they're going to continue having this watch, and they're going to pass it down in generations. They want all the service records, all the bells and whistles, thinking it's going to increase the watch's value. In our eyes, not so much. There's only certain watches where we see an increased value if the watches were serviced, and that's the very top tier. We're talking about grand complications, minute repeaters, tourbillons, minute repeater tourbillons, chronographs, expensive Richard Mille watches. There's certain exceptions to the rule where a dealer will actually value that service. But 9 out of 10 watches, we're not going to value the fact that you had your Rolex service. You know why? Because when we get it in, we don't know what happened with that watch between when you serviced it and the time you gave it to us. We're still going to run it through service. We're still going to run it through our watchmakers, because we guarantee those watches. We'll warranty those watches. So you guys decide which route you want to go. This is my own personal opinion, and you just have to decide, are you the person that wants all the bells and whistles and the service records and everything up for your car or for your watch? Or you're somebody that's going to continue wearing your watch until it breaks and then turn it in and fix it, because at the end of the day, the cost still be more or less the same. Is there an easy way now to verify if your watch is authentic? The answer is yes And the answer is no. The easiest way to do it is a good old cliche. If something is too good to be true, it usually is. I'll tell you a quick story. A person calls me up buying a two-tone Submariner. This was a while ago. These things were trading around $7,000, $8,000 back then. He's writing me all these messages. Listen, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm a little bit afraid, buying over the internet. This was back in the days where we had to spend most of our time proving to people that they're not going to get a brick in a box or a fake watch. And I'm like, well, is there something happen? I sense like something happened in the past that you're very hesitant. Look, I've been on eBay for a while. We have positive feedback everywhere. People know me. I have references. He's like, yes, I bought a watch on eBay and it turned out to be a fake. I said, well, let me ask you a question. How much did you pay? He said, I paid $1,250 for the watch. I said, so when you went on eBay and you saw 50 other watches just like it trading anywhere from $7,000 to $9,000 depending on condition, and you found one for $1,250 as a buy it now, that did not raise a red flag? He's like, well, I figured it's eBay. Sometimes you find deals, from other people. I said, well, let me ask you a question. The seller that sold you the watch, is it still on there? Is it still on eBay? He's like, yeah, he's actually still on eBay. So I go onto the seller's page, and this seller, now this doesn't happen on eBay anymore, but when things were first starting out, people would get away with things like listing a Rolex-like watch with no box on paper. Please read the description and the title carefully and let the price reflect what you're going to get. So basically telling you everything that this is a replica without telling you it's a replica, because then the listings get kicked off. Now that doesn't fly on eBay anymore, obviously, although I'm sure you can find a few listings here and there. So again, if something is too good to be true, it usually is. Look, now me personally, I've handled every watch under the sun in the last 21 years. I can tell a fake watch from across the room, right? Of course, there are super clones. Of course, there are things that I can't tell from across the room unless I open up the watch. Average Joe cannot take a watch, open it up, and verify the movement. Even if you did open up the watch, looking at the guts of a particular watch, 9 out of 10 times you wouldn't know whether it's real or not either. Aesthetically, you can do a comparison. There are plenty of videos out there showing you fake versus real, even with the watches opened up. At a glance, if you see something is just a little bit off, because a Rolex Submariner will look the same for every million Rolex Submariners that they're going to make. And odds are something somewhere is going to be off. It's very easy to look up the weight of the watch. How much is the watch supposed to weigh? Side-by-side comparison with images. But last but not least, I tell you guys this all the time. Don't buy the watch, buy the dealer. Purchase your watches where you have this lovely little thing called recourse. This is what we do. This is what I've always done in the industry. I never purchase watches where I don't have recourse in case the watch comes up stolen. Doesn't necessarily have to be fake, right? I buy from reputable dealers, or when I buy from the public, I basically make you sign your life away to where nobody in their right mind is going to want to try to pass off an authentic watch. And then you're going to say, well, maybe I should buy a watch without box and papers. No, you can still buy a watch without box and papers. That happens. It happens a lot of the times, especially some of the older watches or vintage watches for that matter. But again, you buy the dealer, not the watch. And that's the number one advice I can give you, and make sure that you have recourse. And the last question, we'll segue into the next question, is do gray market watch dealers offer warranties or guarantees on their watches? I know we do. I know a lot of other dealers that also do. One of the things we have to battle with is say, well, if I buy from my AD, or if I buy directly from the manufacturer, I'll have the warranty. And we said, okay, we'll match the warranty. You know why? Remember the first question? I said, for the most part, these watches don't really break. Because if a manufacturer offers you a 3-year warranty on a watch, I'll be just as happy to do the same. You know why? Because 99 out of 100 times there will be no issue with that watch, and that warranty will not be called upon, if you will. Now, when it comes to pre-owned watches, we also warranty them, and that's part of an added service, because sometimes people will call me and say, well, this guy's going to sell it to me for 15, you're asking 16. Can you match the price? And I'll say, well, no, I can't. And they're like, why? Well, it's because I provide you a 3-year warranty on the watch. It's because I service the watch before selling it to you. It's because I have a 7-day return policy. If you don't like something, throw it in the box and send it back. This is why sometimes it pays to pay a little more and find those gray market dealers that do offer those warranties and guarantees. And again, buy the dealer. See who are you actually dealing with. Just because a gray market dealer out there is telling you, yeah, I'll warranty your watch for 3 years, make sure he's around in the next 3 years to actually be able to execute on that warranty should it be needed. For us, majority of the stuff doesn't come back because we do the work up front. That guarantee is never really called upon. And picking back off of, servicing and things of that nature, people often ask, what are the best practices of storing and maintaining a watch collection? It depends on how long you're storing them for. If this is something that in your daily, weekly rotation, one of those watch stands If it's something that you're just looking to put away for a long, long time, put it in a safety deposit box in its own original box. What you want to stay away from is keeping your stuff in places that may be damp, a little bit too humid, right? First and foremost, it'll affect the boxes and eventually it'll affect the watch. But the best practice of storing watches, let's say even those that you want to store for a long time, is take them out once in a while, wind them up, let them run. Because what do you have inside a watch? You have oil. Over time, if it sits, the oil tends to thicken, right? And if the oil tends to thicken, this watch will run fast or slow on you. So giving your watch a little bit of run time is always a good practice, even if you only wear it once a year for special occasions, much like a car. Guys have collectible cars they'll keep in their garage, and notice those cords where they hook up the battery so the battery doesn't die. Or once in a while, they'll turn that car on, let the engine run through, let the oil get into the engine, and instead of drying out or things of that nature, right? It's a very, very similar parallel when it comes to cars and watches. If you're going to store it for a long time, make sure it gets a little bit of wrist time. If not wrist time, wind it, have it out and about, have it running for a few days, put it back in that safe deposit box. But as far as storing specifically, it's really your preferences. Some people like watch boxes, some people like watch winders, some people buy $100,000, cases that have winders and drawers and they look fancy like a beautiful piece of furniture. But really no rhyme or reason, it's really personal choice. And of course, since we talked about gray market so much, what does gray market even mean in the watch market? The gray market is very simple. It's a secondary market for goods from those sellers that are not authorized by the manufacturer of that particular item to sell it as an official dealer. And oftentimes, this is where the last question we talked about, like, well, ADs you say, well, I'm an authorized dealer. I'll give you the warranty. The manufacturer's warranty will apply, and this, that, and the other. Well, it's become a norm that even every secondary dealer or gray market dealer now provides the same exact warranty, whether it's a pre-owned item or a brand new item. So, yeah, gray market in a nutshell is us. What are the most underrated luxury watch brands or models that might be a good investment? Hey, Roman, I'm looking to buy this watch. You think it's a good investment? Roman, I'm looking to buy that watch. You think it's a good investment? Roman's answer has always been, I don't have a crystal ball. Can't tell the future. There are too many variables when it comes to the luxury watch brands. Now, obviously, Rolex, Patek Philippe, certain Audemars Piguet models, etc., based on the last 10, 15 years would seem like a good bet. Rolex has always been a good bet. Over time, Rolex tends to hold its value, at least not lose value. Most I said that holding values actually makes it a good investment. How many cars can you get out there and buy today, drive for 3 years, and then resell for more than half price? Not many. Watches are not an investment. They're an expensive toy. Buy them, enjoy them, wear them. Although over the last few years, I've been having a hard time arguing that point because the watch market has gone crazy. People have realized crazy gains on their watches, and they're like, well, my Rolex has outperformed the S&P 500. At least that's what the news said. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, CNN, all these places, like, oh my God, they're talking about watch indexes. One thing they don't talk about is the cost of in and out. Take a piece of real estate. Everybody knows out there that to get in and out of a piece of real estate, you're going to pay anywhere from 3 to 6% to the real estate broker, a 1% transfer tax, et cetera, and that's your cost. But with watches, it's different. If you think about guys like us working anywhere from a 10 to 20% margin, that eventually becomes your cost to get out of them. Unless you want to go the route of putting them at eBay yourself or Chrono24 yourself, and you have the means to insure them and ship them properly and service them. You don't, so you usually come back to guys like us, allow us to make that small margin in between, and that's the fee that you pay. So now that you pay $10,000 for your watch, and maybe the watch has gone up in value a certain amount of time, right? You got lucky. What happened over the last 3 years during the COVID boom, we've seen before. We saw it leading up to 2008 crisis. Also, the economy was booming. There was a lot of money in the market, and watches kept going up and up and up and up until all of a sudden we saw a crisis. Now, what happened a year and a half ago wasn't a crisis, thank God. It was just a correction because things had just gotten out of hand. Daytonas and stainless steel was selling for $55,000 to $60,000, and that's when everybody said, great investment. I paid $25,000, 2 years ago. Today, they're back down to $30,000. Still 2x its retail value. At the end of the day, what you want to look for is for this not to be a moneymaker for you. You want to buy smart. If what your concern is money in the bank, then you stick to the brands that have a track record. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, among a few other brands. And you also have to look at the lineup of that brand. It's not every watch in that brand that holds its value. There are certain Rolexes out there that don't hold their value. If you may also want to look into vintage. Just keep in mind, you're going to pay top dollar up front, but in the long run, vintage is always going to stay vintage. It has proven record. And last thing you have to remember is trends. This is a trendy industry. Trends change all the time, which is why I'm back to vintage, because vintage is proven, and you can see the history through auction results as well as, seeing what the stuff sold on the secondary for. When it comes to the newer stuff, you go with proven brands and proven models. You can never go wrong with a Rolex Daytona. Of course, going back to what we started talking about, you're going to be on a waiting list forever, or you're going to go into a store and spend a ton more money. So by the time you do the math, you basically were better off buying it on the secondary, paying the premium. And consider yourself a winner if the watch that you bought and you've had for a little bit either goes down or up 20%. Either way, it's still a win-win. Because at the end of the day, I want you to buy these things to enjoy them, not think about how much they're going to be worth 5 years from now. How can one assess condition and authenticity of a vintage watch? I do consider myself somewhat of a vintage expert, but not remotely close to those that do nothing but vintage. It's a completely different genre of watches. There's a lot more information to retain. It requires a lot more hands-on experience. So I myself choose to go out to a vintage expert. My buddy Adam Golden from Menta Watches, you've heard me talk about him all the time. Whenever I do vintage deals, I try to do it with him. And the reason I try to do it with him because he has the 100% knowledge. Because my fear as a dealer is I'm going to sell somebody a watch based on my knowledge of that vintage product and knowing what it's worth, while at the same token not noticing something that diminishes the value of that watch by sometimes big as 50 or 70% due to my knowledge. So I choose to bring in an expert to do so. And I advise you the same thing, buy the dealer, not the watch. How do gray market watch dealers determine the pricing of their watches? We look up at the ceiling and we say, it looks like $12,000. Sure, that's what we'll put down. No, but in all seriousness, it's experience. Here at Luxury Bazaar, we have a procurement department with a gentleman who's in charge, who's been with me for 15 years, has touched every watch. It takes time to get there. Again, experience, which you can't buy. But for the most part, we have purchasing history, we have sales history, we have now the internet, where we can quickly gauge what these things are selling for online. Now, Chrono 24 is a little bit skewed. You have to take it with a grain of salt because there are fees that those platforms charge. There are also fake listings on there sometimes where people just put up pictures fishing for a lead. But for the most part, if you go across major websites that actually physically have this stuff in stock, you know they have it, and you look at the pricing, it's pretty easy to gauge what it's out there selling for. But for us, we have the luxury of having a large volume of sales and large volume of data, knowing that this is what these things are. And last but not least, for us, it's procurement costs. We know what it's going to cost us to get a particular watch. As the market is moving, we're moving with the market. We know what these things cost. So when somebody calls in, let's say on a watch we don't have, we have to source it, we go out there and source it in other places, we know what the costs are. So it's really data-driven for companies like us, and also at the same token, experience-driven. Where do gray market dealers get their watches at prices low enough to resell to the public? Various sources. Number one, we buy from the public. We buy from you guys. Number two, we buy from other grades. Number three, we buy from ADs. And sometimes we buy directly from the manufacturers. So those are the four places where watches are procured. Again, there's also trade shows, but that's more of a B2B situation like I mentioned earlier. But for the most part, those are the four areas. Is watch insurance necessary? Or is it just an upsell like a service on a car? Absolutely not. Watch insurance is very necessary. Everything we have in our office is insured. Everything I put on my wrist is insured. Everything my wife puts on her wrist is insured. Everything I keep in the house is insured. Now, Chris Rock once said, insurance is in case shit happens, and shouldn't you get your money back in case shit doesn't happen? Funny, I do agree with that, but the question is, do you want to take a chance? What price range of a watch are you playing with? A wife has her engagement ring, her wedding band. You have a wedding band. You may have a watch. She may have a watch. That will often add up to a significant amount of money. And I don't care if you're playing in a $3,000 to $5,000 price range on a watch or $300,000 to $500,000. The question is, are you going to be okay if you lose that watch and you have to go out and dish out the money to pay for another? Usually, when you look at all the insurance that you pay, you add it all up over the years, and 10 years later, you're going, well, wow, if I didn't pay for that insurance in these 10 years, I could have bought myself 3 more watches with that money. But you know what? There's this tiny little thing. It's called Murphy's Law. And guess what? The minute you cancel your insurance, you're going to lose your freaking watch. I promise you. I had this happen to a few of my clients and friends. It never fails. So yes, I would insure any and all luxury goods. You insure your car, right? It's the law. You have to. It's not the law to insure your watches, but it certainly helps in case something does happen. Why is the trade-in value of a watch higher than the selling price of the same watch? It's math. And for the most part, we try not to do the math that way. We try to be as transparent as possible with us. The trade-in is usually valued about the same as if I were to write a check for it. But in reality, what is a trade-in? It's me buying your watch and me selling you a watch. At the end of the day, I'm gonna buy your watch with the intention of making money on it. I'm gonna sell you a watch with the intention of making money on it as well. What we sometimes do is we'll adjust the selling price, or maybe even adjust the trade-in value, which often what we do is we adjust the selling price of the watch. It's not a good look where all of a sudden I'm giving you more for your watch, where like, wait a minute, it's on eBay for that. So I'd rather tell you, look, you're trading a watch, I'm gonna make a little bit of money there, I'm gonna make a little bit of money here, I'm gonna meet you somewhere in the middle where I'm not making as much on my watch if I was just to sell it to you flat out, because I'm getting this trade on which I'm going to make a profit as well. Also not as much as I normally would if I was just buying it out front. Hope the math makes sense there. Are watch auctions by the big auction houses a good place to buy watches, or are they overpriced? For the most part, they are more expensive. And I'll tell you why they are more expensive, because there's a certain genre of people that prefer to buy these auction sales because they want the provenance, because they trust the auction houses, although we've seen plenty of scandals out there when it comes to some of the very big names. But the bottom line is this. In an auction environment, you never know what's gonna happen. I myself have bought in auctions before. I watch every auction. I place bids in every auction just in case something like that happens. You never know. There can be a situation where a particular lot didn't get enough attention, where the potential buyers in the room or online went to the bathroom when that was happening. Because remember, these auctions, they'll run through 100, 200, sometimes 300 lots, right? Or maybe there just was not enough interest on that particular model and you're able to get it at a steal. I have bought watches before in auction. When it comes to vintage stuff, sometimes I am willing to pay high because I know the rarity of the watch. And I know that even if I pay top dollar today, I have the clientele to resell it for a higher price. So yes, the only thing with auctions is they have to be extremely disciplined because they hook you in. Once the bidding starts and you're sitting there watching it live and you're bidding live, you know, half the time you're gonna get hooked in and you're gonna overpay. Plus you also have the concept of two dicks in a room. You got two guys sitting in a room bidding on a watch and they wanna show each other whose dick is bigger, and they're gonna continue bidding on this stuff and they're gonna bid the watch through oblivion and sometimes double what the watch is even worse. The best advice I can give you with big auction houses is, first of all, a lot of the big auction houses have previews. So make sure you get out there and look at the stuff that you're buying. You can come in, they'll pull the watch out for you. You can actually look at it, you can sit down at the table. You can preview every single lot. Then make a decision on what you're willing to pay. Sometimes you can make a decision on what you're willing to pay plus one if you're leaving an absentee bid, which means that if you're going up to 100 grand, and let's say the bid increment is, let's say $5,000, you can tell the auction house, I'll go up to 100 plus one, which means if somebody places a bid at 100, that means you will go up to 105 and stop there. Doing it live can get a bit dangerous in terms of getting carried away. It's kind of like gambling, if you will. So yes, there's a good mix in auctions. You can get deals, or you can buy something that's overpriced. I have $30,000 to spend. In your opinion, what are the best 3 watch collection I can build with that budget? I hate these questions. And the reason I hate these questions is because it's a matter of taste. It's a matter of what you like, not a matter of what I like. If it was me, I'd probably get a Rolex GMT, an Omega Speedy, and let's say a Tudor of some sort, right? Because I'm more into sports watches than I'm into dress watches. But maybe you're somebody that likes a particular brand, somebody likes a particular complication, a particular style of watches, a particular metal, right? So it's a very vague question to ask, right? Which is why when somebody comes in here and said, hey, I have a budget of $50,000, the first thing we do is we don't offer them watches. We ask them what they like. Hey, what are you into? What type of complications? Are you into history? Are you into flex? Are you into something that's quiet luxury? What is your style? And that's the only way we can then narrow it down to probably not even 3 watches, but maybe 10 watches from which we can choose. The easiest thing for a watch dealer is to tell you what watch you shouldn't buy. The hardest question to answer is what watch you should buy, especially when we don't know you and we don't know your taste. Guys, thank you so much for watching. A lot of effort goes into the production of these videos. It takes up a lot of my time as well, outside of having to run a company. So I would appreciate it if you, not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. If you are, hit the like, share, comment, subscribe, all those wonderful things that help our channels grow. I'll see you guys on the next one.